humanity refused to retreat. And that's when the true war began. The plasma bolt missed Commander Jake Morrison's head by inches, scorching the bulkhead behind him. He didn't flinch. Around him, the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Defiant shuddered as another volley from the Krathian dreadnought tore through their shields. Alarms screamed. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Chen, was already dead, slumped over her station with smoke rising from her uniform. "All hands, this is Morrison," he said into the ship-wide comm, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We're not running. Lock all weapons on that flagship." The Krathian fleet had expected humanity to do what every other species did when faced with overwhelming force. They expected retreat, negotiation, surrender. The galaxy had rules about these things. When a superior force demanded submission, you submitted. That was how civilization worked. That was how you survived. Humanity had other ideas. The war had started 3 months ago when the Krathian Dominion arrived at Earth's doorstep with 200 warships and a simple message: submit or be destroyed. Every species they'd encountered had chosen submission. Some had resisted at first, but after losing a few ships, they'd seen reason. The Krathians were the galaxy's dominant power for a reason. Their technology was superior. Their numbers were vast. Resistance was mathematically futile. Earth's government had sent back a 2-word response: come try. Now, orbiting the smoldering ruins of Mars Colony 7, Morrison understood what that defiance meant. It meant watching good people die. It meant fighting battles you couldn't win. It meant standing your ground when every tactical computer in the fleet was screaming at you to retreat. "Sir, they're charging their main cannon," warned Ensign Kevin Wright from the weapons station, his young face pale but determined. "If that hits us, we're done." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Krathian flagship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of the Defiant, was positioning for a killing shot. Around them, the remnants of Earth's Third Fleet were scattered and burning. 47 ships had entered this engagement. 12 were still fighting. The math was brutal and simple. "Helm, full burn toward that flagship," Morrison ordered. "Right. Arm every missile we have left. When we're at point-blank range, fire everything." "Sir, that's a suicide run?" the helmsman, Lisa Park, said quietly. "I know," Morrison replied. "But we're going to take that ship with us. And when the Krathians write their history of this war, they're going to remember this day. They're going to remember that humanity doesn't retreat." The Defiant surged forward, engines screaming directly toward the dreadnought's charging weapon. The Krathian commander, confident in his victory, didn't even bother to evade. Why would he? The human ship was already crippled, already dead. This was just the final moment. That's where the Krathians made their first real mistake. They didn't understand that humanity's most dangerous weapon wasn't their ships or their missiles or their plasma cannons. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat. The distance closed. 3,000 meters? 2,000? The Krathian main cannon was glowing white-hot, ready to fire. Morrison counted down in his head. 1,000 meters, 500. "Fire," he said calmly. Every remaining missile on the Defiant launched simultaneously. 47 warheads, each one armed with a fusion core set to maximum yield. At this range, there was no point defense, no countermeasures, no time to react. The Krathian flagship disappeared in a miniature sun. The shockwave caught the Defiant, spinning it like a toy, but Morrison was already smiling as the bridge filled with fire. Earth Command would receive the sensor logs. They'd see what happened here. And they'd know that humanity had just taught the galaxy a new lesson. Retreat wasn't in their vocabulary. 3 days later, in the underground command center beneath what used to be Denver, General Patricia Hayes studied the holographic display showing the current state of the war. It wasn't good. The Krathian Dominion had pulled back after the destruction of their flagship, but only to regroup. Intelligence suggested they were amassing an even larger fleet, one that would crack Earth like an egg. Her staff was arguing about evacuation protocols, about which cities to abandon first, about how many people they could get off planet before the hammer fell. Hayes let them talk. She'd already made her decision. "Enough," she said, and the room fell silent. "We're not evacuating Earth. We're not abandoning our home. If the Krathians want this planet, they're going to have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." "General, be realistic," said Colonel Richard Banks, her chief of staff. "Their next fleet will have 500 ships. We have maybe 70 vessels left combat ready. The math doesn't work." "The math never works," Hayes replied. "It didn't work at Thermopylae. It didn't work at the Alamo. It didn't work at Mars Colony 7. But we're still here, and our enemies learned that fighting humans costs more than they ever imagined. She pulled up a new file on the display. Project Prometheus. It had been deemed too risky, too expensive, too dangerous. That was before the war. Now, it was humanity's last card to play. 6 months ago, our scientists figured out how to weaponize quantum entanglement, Hayes explained. We can create linked pairs of fusion bombs. Detonate one, and its partner detonates simultaneously, no matter where it is in the universe. No warning, no defense. Instant. The room went very quiet as the implications sank in. We've been building these in secret, Hayes continued. Thousands of them. And over the past 2 months, our stealth ships have been planting the partner bombs on every major Krathian world, every military installation, every fleet staging area. They don't know. Their sensors can't detect quantum entanglement signatures. Banks looked sick. General, that's genocide. That's wiping out their entire civilization. Yes, Hayes said simply. That's exactly what it is. And I'm going to send them a message right now, explaining that if they attack Earth again, I'll detonate every single bomb simultaneously. Their species will be extinct before their fleet reaches our solar system. They'll never believe you'd actually do it, another officer protested. No civilized species would commit mutual destruction like that. Hayes smiled grimly. And that's their second mistake. They keep thinking we're like them. They keep thinking we'll act rationally, that we'll choose survival over principles, that we'll retreat when the cost gets too high. She activated the communication system, broadcasting on all Krathian military frequencies. This is General Patricia Hayes of Earth Defense Command. 3 minutes ago, we detonated one of our quantum-linked weapons as a demonstration. Your colony on Kreth Minor no longer exists. We have similar devices planted on 417 of your worlds. If your fleet crosses the Mars orbital line, every single bomb detonates. Your species ends. You have 24 hours to begin complete military withdrawal from human space. This is not a negotiation. This is not a bluff. Humanity refuses to retreat. Now you have to decide if you're willing to die for the same principle. She cut the transmission and looked around at her horrified staff. Get me confirmation that Kreth Minor is gone. And someone bring me coffee. It's going to be a long day. The Krethian response came in 18 hours. Their entire fleet was pulling back, retreating beyond the edge of human-explored space. Their ambassador requested immediate peace negotiations. For the first time in their 1,000-year history of conquest, the Krathian Dominion had encountered something they couldn't defeat, a species that would rather die than kneel. But Hayes knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because the other species in the galaxy were watching, they'd seen Earth refuse to retreat. They'd seen the price humanity was willing to pay, and they were starting to wonder if maybe they'd been wrong to surrender so easily. 2 weeks after the Krathian withdrawal, Commander Lisa Park, one of the few survivors from the Defiant, stood in the rebuilt Earth orbital station, looking down at the blue marble below. She'd been promoted, given command of one of the new ships rolling out of the accelerated construction program. The vessel was docked beside her, gleaming and deadly. They'd named it Morrison, after her fallen captain. Quite a view, said a voice beside her. She turned to see Captain Daniel Cross, another survivor from the Third Fleet. His ship, the Vengeance, was berthed on the opposite dock. Doesn't feel real, Lisa admitted. 3 weeks ago, we were losing. Now the Krathians are running scared, and half the minor species in the sector are sending us diplomatic requests. That's because they finally understand, Daniel said. For centuries, they've played by the Krathians' rules. Stronger force wins, weaker force submits. It's logical. It's how you minimize casualties. But it only works if everyone agrees to the same game. And we changed the rules, Lisa finished. We didn't change them. We broke them. We showed the galaxy that there's something more powerful than superior technology or numerical advantage. Raw, stubborn, human refusal to accept defeat. Daniel paused. Of course, now we have to live up to that reputation. Lisa looked at the Morrison through the viewport. The Krathians aren't the only threat out there. Intelligence says the Varn Collective is watching. They're even stronger than the Krathians. More ruthless. Let them watch, Daniel said quietly. Let them all watch. Maybe they'll decide Earth isn't worth the cost. Or maybe they'll come anyway. Either way, they know what they're getting into. 3 months later, the first Varn scout ships appeared at the edge of human space. They broadcast a simple message. The Varn Collective had observed humanity's conflict with the Krathian Dominion. They were impressed. They wished to establish diplomatic relations, trade agreements, a mutual defense pact. In the underground command center, General Hayes read the message and laughed. It was the kind of laugh that held no humor, only grim satisfaction. The Varn Collective, the galaxy's most powerful military force, wanted to be humanity's ally, not because they liked humans, not because they shared common values, but because they'd seen what happened to species that tried to make humanity retreat. "Send them back a counter-proposal," Hayes told her communications officer. "Tell them we'll consider their offer, but make it clear that any alliance with humanity comes with one condition. If they ever threaten Earth or human colonies, we'll do to them what we promised the Crethians. We don't negotiate from weakness. We don't ever negotiate from weakness again," the Varn accepted within an hour. In the following months, something unprecedented happened in the galaxy. Species that had been subjects of the Crethian dominion for generations began to rebel. They'd seen Earth's example. They'd seen that resistance was possible. The Crethians, still reeling from their near extinction, couldn't suppress the uprisings. Their empire, built on the assumption that force would always triumph, began to crumble. And at the center of it all, humanity armed itself. The shipyards around Earth and Mars ran 24 hours a day. New weapons systems were tested and deployed. The quantum-linked bombs remained planted throughout Crethian space, a constant reminder of the price of aggression. But Hayes knew the real war was just beginning. Because humanity had revealed something dangerous, they'd shown the galaxy that the old rules could be broken. That defiance was possible, that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. Other species would learn that lesson. Some would become allies, some would become enemies, and some would decide that humanity itself was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. 6 months after the Crethian withdrawal, Lieutenant Commander Amy Wright, sister of the late Kevin Wright, who died on the Defiant, sat in the tactical station of the Morrison. They were on patrol near the outer colonies when the sensors lit up with contacts. Lots of contacts. "Captain Park," Amy said, her voice tight. "We have inbound vessels. Configuration unknown. Counting 400-plus ships, and they're not Crethian or Varn." Lisa Park moved to the tactical display, her jaw clenching. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Calm. Send a priority burst to Earth Command. We have a new player in the game." The unknown fleet broadcast on all frequencies. The message was in perfect English, which meant they'd been studying humanity for some time. "Human Vessel Morrison, this is the Convergence Unity Fleet. We represent 47 species who have reviewed your recent actions against the Crethian Dominion, your threat to commit genocide, your use of weapons of mass destruction, and your aggressive expansion violate established galactic law. You have been deemed a threat to civilized space. Surrender your vessel immediately. Earth will be placed under convergence quarantine. This is not negotiable." Lisa looked at her crew. Young faces, scared but determined. They'd all volunteered for this. They all knew what serving on a human ship meant in this new galaxy. "Weapons, what do we have?" Lisa asked calmly. "Full loadout, Captain. Missiles, plasma cannons, and 2 of the new quantum-linked warheads. Helm, set course directly toward the center of their formation. Maximum burn." "Captain, we're 1 ship against 400, the helmsman protested. "I know the math, Ensign," Lisa said. "But they clearly don't know the first thing about fighting humans. If they did, they would have opened fire by now instead of demanding our surrender." She activated the shipwide comm. "This is Captain Park. The Convergence fleet just told us to surrender. They said Earth is going to be quarantined. They said humanity is too dangerous to be free." She paused, letting that sink in. "They're absolutely right. We are dangerous. We're dangerous because we refuse to live on our knees. We're dangerous because we taught the galaxy that the old rules are dead. And we're about to show them just how dangerous one human ship can be." The Morrison accelerated toward the Convergence fleet, alone, outnumbered, outgunned, and utterly fearless. Behind them, across human space, the alert went out. The Convergence had declared war. Every ship, every station, every colony went to battle stations. In the underground command center, General Hayes activated Project Prometheus, targeting not just Crethian worlds now, but convergence facilities across 47 star systems. The quantum-linked bombs were ready. Earth's fleet, grown to over 200 vessels in the past months, began to mobilize. And throughout human space, men and women put on their uniforms, kissed their families goodbye, and prepared to fight. Because humanity had learned something in the past year. They'd learned that the galaxy wasn't ready for a species that refused to retreat. The old powers had grown comfortable, certain that their strength guaranteed their dominance. They'd forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest fleet or the best technology. It's the one who looks at impossible odds and says, "Not good enough." We're still fighting. Lisa Park watched the Convergence fleet approaching on her sensors. 400 ships to 1. The smart play would be to retreat, to fall back to Earth and regroup. That's what any other species would do. That's what the Convergence expected, but humanity doesn't retreat. And that's when the true war began. The Morrisons' weapons locked on the Convergence flagship. Amy Wright's fingers hovered over the firing controls. Around them, space filled with energy signatures as the enemy fleet charged their weapons. 400 ships, all targeting one small human vessel. The battle computers calculated their survival chance at 0.03%. Lisa smiled. Fire everything. The Morrisons' missiles launched in a perfect spread pattern, each one programmed with evasive protocols that Earth's best programmers had spent months perfecting. The plasma cannons fired continuously, their barrels glowing white-hot from the sustained discharge, and the 2 quantum-linked warheads, each one paired with a bomb planted deep in Convergence space, shot toward the enemy formation. The Convergence ships opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams, projectiles, and exotic weapons that humanity had never seen before. The Morrison shields flared and died within seconds. Hull breaches opened across 3 decks. The engineering section lost atmosphere. Half the crew was dead before they could scream. But the human missiles were already among the Convergence fleet. They weaved through point defense fire, corkscrewed around interceptors, and found their targets. 12 enemy ships disappeared in fusion fire. Then the quantum warheads detonated. 2 explosions, simultaneous, one in front of the Morrison and one 300 light-years away in the heart of Convergence space. The paired bomb had been planted beneath the Convergence Council chambers. In an instant, the entire leadership of 47 species ceased to exist. The shockwave from the local detonation caught the Morrison broadside. The ship tumbled, breaking apart, trailing debris and bodies. But through her dying sensors, Lisa Park saw something beautiful. The Convergence fleet had stopped. Their command structure was gone, their coordination was shattered. And in that moment of confusion, the rest of Earth's fleet arrived. 200 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, having been racing toward this position since the moment the Morrison sent its alert. They'd known the Morrison would engage, they'd known Lisa Park would attack instead of retreating, and they'd known exactly where to find the battle because that's what humans did. They ran toward the fight, not away from it. General Hayes had gambled that the Convergence would congregate at their first contact point, expecting an easy victory over a single ship. She'd been right. Now, the Convergence fleet, leaderless and disorganized, faced a coordinated human assault. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. Tactically, the humans were still outnumbered 2-1. Technologically, the Convergence had superior weapons. But wars aren't won by numbers or technology alone. They're won by will. And in the test of wills, humanity had no equal. Ship after ship died on both sides. Entire crews were vaporized. Captains rammed their vessels into enemy dreadnoughts when their weapons ran dry. Marines boarded Convergence ships and fought compartment by compartment with knives when their ammunition ran out. It was brutal. It was savage. It was everything the civilized galaxy had spent millennia trying to prevent. And humanity won. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because when every tactical computer in the Convergence fleet calculated the cost of continuing the battle and recommended retreat, the species of the Convergence listened to that advice. They were civilized, they were rational, they understood when to cut their losses. The human ships, receiving the same tactical data, the same projections, the same recommendations to fall back, ignored every single one. They fought until their ships were wrecks. They fought until their weapons were empty. They fought until the Convergence fleet broke and ran, unable to comprehend an enemy that would rather die than withdraw. In the aftermath, floating in the debris field in an emergency life pod, Lisa Park watched the Convergence ship's fleet at faster-than-light speed. Around her, rescue shuttles were searching for survivors. There wouldn't be many. The Morrison was gone, along with 43 other human ships. 5,000 people dead. Maybe 6,000. The butcher's bill was still being tallied. But the Convergence had lost 200 ships in their entire government, and more importantly, they'd learned what the Crethians had learned. That humanity couldn't be beaten by conventional means, that fighting humans meant accepting losses that no rational species would tolerate, that humanity refused to retreat, and in that refusal, they'd become something the galaxy had never seen before. Not conquerors.
Not peacekeepers.
But something else entirely. A species that existed outside the normal calculations of power and diplomacy. A variable that couldn't be accounted for in any tactical computer. a force of nature wrapped in human skin. 3 days later, recovered from her injuries, Lisa Park stood in the rebuilt Earth Command Center. General Hayes was addressing what remained of the human fleet commanders. The Varn Collective had honored their alliance, sending supplies and ships. Other species, minor powers who'd watched the battle, were requesting to join what was being called the Free Worlds Coalition. Species who were tired of being subjects, tired of surrendering, tired of living under the shadow of stronger powers. Humanity had started something. A revolution, not of weapons or technology, but of mindset. The idea that you could say no, that you could stand your ground, that retreat wasn't the only option when faced with superior force. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayes said, her voice carrying across the command center, the Convergence has requested peace negotiations. They want to discuss terms, reparations, territorial agreements, the usual diplomatic dance. She paused, and a cold smile crossed her face. I'm going to tell them no. Not yet. First, they're going to withdraw from every system they've occupied by force in the past century. They're going to release every subject species. They're going to dismantle their occupation fleets. And then, maybe, we'll talk about peace. General, they'll never agree to those terms, Colonel Banks protested. That's asking them to give up their entire power structure? Yes, Hayes agreed. And if they refuse, we start detonating more quantum-linked bombs. We have them planted on 70 convergence worlds now. We'll turn their empire into a debris field one planet at a time until they understand that the age of conquest is over. The room fell silent. This was the true war Hayes had foreseen. Not a battle of ships or weapons, but a battle of wills. A test of who would blink first. And humanity had proven time and again that they would never blink. It would burn the galaxy down before they retreated. We didn't start this war, Hayes continued. The Krethians did when they told us to submit. The Convergence escalated it when they decided to quarantine Earth. But we're going to finish it. And when we're done, the galaxy is going to understand one simple truth. Humanity doesn't retreat. Ever. No matter the cost. In the weeks that followed, the Convergence debated. I could not say that their surviving leaders argued about the human demands, about the ethics of weapons of mass destruction, about the precedent it would set to capitulate to terrorists. That's what they called humans now. Terrorists. Savages. A virus that had infected the civilized galaxy with dangerous ideas about resistance. But they couldn't ignore the quantum bombs. Every day, intelligence confirmed more bombs on more worlds. Earth's stealth ships, impossibly hard to detect, were everywhere. The humans had spent their resources not on building a larger fleet, but on seeding the galaxy with weapons that could end civilizations with a single command. It was, the Convergence philosophers agreed, the most barbaric military strategy imaginable. It violated every principle of proportional response, every concept of civilized warfare. It was terrorism raised to a cosmic scale, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. 2 months after the battle, the Convergence agreed to Earth's terms. Every occupation force withdrew. Subject species were released. The empire that had controlled a third of the galaxy for 500 years began to crumble. Some member species rejoined willingly as equals. Others declared independence, and a few, inspired by Earth's example, began their own campaigns of resistance against other oppressors. The galaxy was changing. The old order, built on the assumption that superior force guaranteed dominance, was dying. In its place, something new was emerging. Chaotic. Dangerous. Free. Lisa Park, promoted again, now commanded not just one ship, but an entire battle group. 12 vessels, all crewed by humans and volunteers from liberated species. They'd patrolled the frontier, responding to distress calls, defending colonies, and occasionally showing the flag to remind everyone that Earth was watching. She'd lost count of how many people had died under her command, how many ships she'd watched explode, how many memorial services she'd attended. The price of humanity's refusal to retreat was paid in blood, and the ledger just kept growing. But she also saw the results. Species that had been slaves for generations were free. Worlds that had been strip-mined were being restored. The major powers, terrified of human reprisal, had become careful about how they wielded their strength. The galaxy wasn't peaceful, but it was more free than it had been in centuries. Was it worth the cost? Lisa didn't know. But she knew humanity had made its choice. They'd chosen to fight rather than kneel, to risk everything rather than accept subjugation. And that choice had rippled across the stars, changing everything it touched. General Hayes, in one of her last official acts before retiring, activated the final phase of Project Prometheus. The quantum-linked bombs remained in place, but their detonation codes were distributed, not just to Earth Command, but to the Free Worlds Coalition, to every species that had joined humanity's cause. It was an insane risk. Giving weapons of mass destruction to dozens of species, any of whom could use them for conquest or revenge. But it was also the only way to ensure that no single power could dominate again. Mutual assured destruction, scaled to a galactic level. The civilized species were horrified, but they also understood. Humanity wasn't trying to rule the galaxy. They were trying to make it ungovernable by any single power. To create a balance of terror so complete that war became unthinkable, it was, ironically, the most peaceful solution humanity could imagine, because humans understood something the civilized species didn't, that the only way to prevent tyranny wasn't to be stronger than everyone else. It was to make sure no one could afford to try. 5 years after the first Krethian contact, Commander Jake Morrison's daughter, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, stood on the bridge of a new ship. This one was named Defiant II, in honor of the vessel her father had died on. She'd been 12 when the war started. Now she was 17, fresh out of the Accelerated Academy program, wearing the uniform her father had died in. The galaxy was still dangerous. New threats emerged constantly. Some species adapted to the new reality better than others. There were still battles, still conflicts, still deaths, but the nature of warfare had changed. No one invaded anymore. No one demanded submission. Because everyone knew what would happen if they did. Humanity would respond. And humanity didn't retreat. Sarah looked at the tactical display, showing the current patrol route along the frontier. Somewhere out there, unknown species existed. Some would be peaceful. Some would be hostile. And some would make the same mistake the Krethians and the Convergence had made. They'd assume that humans were like everyone else, that they'd calculate costs and benefits rationally, that they'd retreat when the odds were against them. Those species would learn. They always did, usually at terrible cost to both sides, but they would learn that humanity had changed the rules of the game forever. Because 5 years ago, when faced with overwhelming force and certain defeat, humanity had refused to retreat. And in that refusal, they'd started a war that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Not a war of conquest or territory, but a war of ideas. A war about what it meant to be free and what price you were willing to pay to stay that way. The true war, Sarah understood, wasn't against the Krethians or the Convergence or any specific enemy. It was against the idea that might made right, that stronger meant better. That force could compel obedience. Humanity had proven that idea wrong, not through superior technology or tactics, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept the way things had always been, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the Defiant II set course for the unknown regions of space, Sarah Morrison smiled. Her father would be proud. He died showing the galaxy that humanity didn't retreat. Now it was her turn to carry on that legacy. Whatever came next, whatever threats emerged from the dark, humanity would face them the same way they'd faced every challenge since the war began. With courage, with determination, and with an absolute refusal to back down. Because that's what humans did, they didn't retreat. And in that simple, stubborn, beautiful defiance, they'd given the galaxy something it had forgotten it could have. Hope.